probably heard the saying, "Don't fly too close to the sun," but have you ever wondered about its origin? Today, we're diving into one of the most captivating paintings from the Victorian era that brings this ancient warning to life. The Lament for Icarus by Herbert James Draper. Created in 1898, this masterpiece isn't just another pretty picture hanging in a museum. It's a window into a fascinating period when science and mythology collided in unexpected ways. Let's unravel the layers of this masterpiece together and discover why this particular interpretation of an ancient Greek myth struck such a powerful chord in late Victorian society. Let's rewind to ancient Crete, where our story begins with Daedalus, a brilliant inventor and architect who found himself in quite a predicament. He wasn't just any prisoner. He was the genius behind the infamous labyrinth, trapped in a tower with his son Icarus by King Minos, who had grown paranoid about the labyrinth's secrets being revealed. Now imagine being in Daedalus's shoes. You're locked in a tower with your teenage son, watching seabirds soar past your window day after day. What would you do? Well, if you're the greatest inventor of your time, you get creative. Using feathers, threads from blankets, and beeswax, Daedalus crafted 2 pairs of wings, a feat of engineering that would make modern designers jealous. But here's where the story gets interesting. Like any good parent, Daedalus wasn't just concerned with the technical aspects of their escape. He knew the real challenge would be managing his son's enthusiasm. "Don't fly too high or too low," he warned Icarus. It's the eternal parental dilemma. How do you protect your child while allowing them to spread their wings? In this case, quite literally. But Icarus, like many young people throughout history, was caught up in the exhilarating freedom of flight. The myth tells us that Icarus flew too close to the sun, melting the wax that held his wings together. But it's more than just a cautionary tale about following instructions. It's a story about the delicate balance between ambition and prudence, between reaching for our dreams and knowing our limitations. The ancient Greeks understood something fundamental about human nature. We're constantly torn between our desire to transcend our limitations and the very real constraints of our mortal existence. When Herbert James Draper decided to tackle this ancient tale in 1898, he did something truly remarkable. He chose not to show us the dramatic moment of the fall, but rather its aftermath. Why is this choice so significant? Well, imagine if instead Draper had painted Icarus tumbling from the sky, wings disintegrating around him. It would have been dramatic, sure, but would it have captured the same depth of emotion? Would it have given us time to reflect on the true cost of ambition? Let's look at how Draper constructed this scene. The painting shows us Icarus's body, beautifully rendered and peaceful in death, being tended to by 3 sea nymphs. But here's where Draper gets clever. He makes some fascinating artistic choices that tells us so much about Victorian sensibilities and the changing intellectual landscape of the time. First, there's the matter of those wings. In the original myth, they're destroyed when the wax melts, but in Draper's version, they're fully intact and magnificent. They're specifically modeled after the bird of paradise, an exotic species that had captured Victorian imagination through Darwin's works. This choice connected the ancient myth to contemporary scientific discoveries about evolution and the natural world. The composition itself is a masterclass in Victorian artistic techniques. Draper used what was known as liquid light effects, a method that created an almost ethereal glow while maintaining solid form. The result is a scene that feels both real and dreamlike, much like the myth itself. The setting sun in the background does more than just create a beautiful atmosphere. It's a subtle reminder of what caused Icarus's downfall, and perhaps more importantly, of the fleeting nature of life and ambition. But perhaps most interesting is how Draper portrays Icarus himself. Unlike earlier depictions that might have shown him as foolish or reckless, Draper's Icarus is almost Christ-like in his beauty and serenity. His tanned skin, a detail Draper specifically included to reference his fatal flight, contrasts with the pale, luminous skin of the nymphs, creating a visual reminder of his brief but remarkable journey. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. To understand why this painting resonated so powerfully with its original audience, we need to step into the Victorian mindset of 1898. This was an era of unprecedented change and scientific discovery that was forcing people to fundamentally rethink what it meant to be human. Just a few decades earlier, in 1859, Charles Darwin had published On the Origin of Species, and it had turned the Victorian world upside down. Suddenly, people were grappling with new ideas about human origins and our relationship with the natural world. The comfortable certainties of the past were being challenged by scientific discoveries, and society was trying to make sense of it all. This is where Draper's painting becomes particularly clever, by choosing to depict this classical myth in such a sensual, naturalistic way. He was speaking to both the past and the present. The wings of Icarus, modeled after the bird of paradise, weren't just beautiful. They were a direct reference to the kinds of spectacular adaptations that Darwin had described in his works. The painting became a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern understanding. But there's more. The Victorians were living in an age of incredible technological progress. They had railways, telegraphs, and were beginning to experiment with flight. Like Icarus, they were pushing boundaries and taking risks that would have seemed impossible to previous generations. The painting spoke to their ambitions and their anxieties about progress. What limits should humans respect? What happens when we push too far? The use of a male body in the painting was also significant for Victorian audiences. In late Victorian painting and sculpture, the male form had become a vehicle for expressing deep emotional and philosophical ideas. Draper's Icarus, beautiful in death, spoke to Victorian ideas about heroism, sacrifice, and the price of progress. It's no coincidence that scholars have compared this image of Icarus to later cultural icons like James Dean. Both represent youth, beauty, and tragic ambition. This painting, with its layers of meaning and its stunning visual impact, continues to challenge and inspire us, proving that great art, like great stories, never truly loses its power to move and teach us. If you enjoyed diving deep into art history with me today, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of art enthusiasts. Don't forget to ring that bell icon to stay updated on more hidden stories behind famous artworks. What do you think about Draper's interpretation of Icarus? Would you have painted the scene differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're interested in more stories about how science and art intersected in the Victorian era, let me know in the comments.